Every way, Dan Blocker was bigger than life. A huge 6'4" and 300 lb, he stood out in Hollywood, but it wasn't just his size that made him famous. It was his heart, his talent, and the wealth he built through hard work, resilience, and sheer determination. When he died in 1972, Blocker had a net worth of $5 million, which is about $25 million today. That's a lot of money for an actor. But Blocker didn't come from money. He worked his way up from nothing in Texas to become a beloved TV star. But how did he get there? To become one of TV's most recognizable faces, he had to go back to 1946, long before Bonanza made him famous. Back then, he was just a young man with big dreams, a football jersey, and a future that no one saw coming. Back then, Blocker's life was all about football. He played at Hardin-Simmons University, a Southern Baptist-affiliated school in Texas. But after only 1 year, he transferred to Sul-Ross State Teachers College in Alpine, Texas. That move literally changed the game at Sul-Ross, but he was interested in more than just sports. When he wasn't practicing or playing football, Blocker worked as a rodeo performer, showing that his size and strength weren't just useful on the football field. When he wasn't wrestling cattle, he was a bar bouncer, and even back then, people knew not to mess with Dan Blocker. In 1950, he graduated with a degree in education. For a man his size, teaching may not seem like a natural career choice, but Blocker loved it. Before he could follow his new dreams, duty called. The Korean War broke out, and Blocker was drawn into the U.S. Army. He went through basic training at Fort Polk in Louisiana before being sent to Korea as an infantry sergeant in the 179th Infantry Regiment, 45th Infantry Division. He later taught in California, but his dream of working in Hollywood wasn't for another few years. Blocker didn't back down when things got hard during his service. He earned the Purple Heart for wounds he got in battle, as well as the National Defense Service Medal, the Korean Service Medal with 2 Bronze Campaign Stars, the Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation, the United Nations Service Medal, the Korean War Service Medal, and the Combat Infantry Badge. By 1952, his military service was over, but he wasn't the same man who had left Texas. He had seen war, been through hardships, and carried the weight of experiences that would shape the rest of his life. But he didn't let those things break him. Instead, he used them to push him forward. When he got back to the U.S., he decided to go in a different direction. He didn't go back to football or full-time teaching. Instead, he went to graduate school and earned a master's degree in drama. This was the start of a journey that would change his life forever. At first, acting wasn't about fame or money for Blocker. It was about his passion for telling stories and his ability to hold an audience's attention. He and his wife Dolphia made the brave choice to move to Los Angeles, where he could put his skills to the test. In the 1950s, Los Angeles wasn't a good place for an aspiring actor. But Dan Blocker wasn't any wannabe actor. He was 6'4" and 300 pounds, so no one could miss him. But getting into Hollywood wasn't about how big he was. It was about showing that he was good at what he did. The hiring makers didn't know what to do with him at first. He was too big to play a typical main man, and he was also too intimidating to play a typical backup. But Blocker had charm that they couldn't ignore. Even though he was big and scary, he had a friendly personality that made everyone like him right away. Not long after, people in the movie and TV business began to pay attention. It was hard for him in his first few years in Hollywood. He took any part that came his way, like many artists who were trying to make it. He first showed up in small roles, sometimes as an extra, and sometimes as a figure in the background who had only a few words. In 1956, he got his first TV part on Gunsmoke as a cavalry captain in Alarm at Pleasant Valley. It was a small part, but it got him started. Afterward, he got more guest parts on Western TV shows, which were real hits at the time. He only showed up in Colt in 1957.45, Little Bighorn, Cheyenne, and the Sheriff of Cochise. There was even a short film with the Three Stooges called Outer Space Jitters, where he played a huge monster named the Goon. He was slowly becoming known. Things began to get better in 1958. He got a regular part as Tiny Buttinger in NBC's Western show Cimarron City, which starred George. Unlike his other parts, this one gave him real screen time, so he could make the character more than just an episode. He was in Zorro, Sergeant Preston of the Yukon, Wagon Train, and Have Gun Will Travel all around the same time. Even though he wasn't a star yet, he was now a real actress. Then 1959 came along and changed everything. David Dort, a TV director working on a new Western show, was looking for the perfect actor to play a cowboy with a big heart who was strong but gentle. He needed someone who could make the screen feel both tough and warm. Hoss Cartwright was the name of the show and the part. Blocker didn't just look like the part when he went to the interview, he was the part. When Bonanza first aired on NBC on September 12, 1959, it was a huge hit right away. The show was about Ben Cartwright and his three boys, Adam, Hoss, and Little Joe. They were in charge of Nevada's huge Ponderosa Ranch. Bonanza wasn't like other westerns of the time. It was about family, morals, and relationships, not just excitement and gunfights. The figure Hoss, played by Blocker, became a fan favorite very quickly. He was the middle brother of the Cartwright family and was known for being strong, kind, and funny. He was different from most tough cowboys on TV, which made people love him. He didn't pull out a gun quickly or use violence to solve problems. He instead relied on his kindness, his sense of humor, and his unshakable love for his family. When the group of Bonanza got together, it was exciting. Ben Cartwright was played by the wise and authoritative Lorne Greene. Adam was played by the serious and smart Pernell Roberts, and Little Joe was played by the reckless and charming Michael Landon. They were all stuck together because of Blocker's Hoss. His kindness and humor made the family dynamic more even, which made the show feel even more real. Blocker was a well-known show for 13 seasons. He was in 415
Jack Hibbs
of
is
the
a well-known
431
pastor, author, and speaker
Bonanza,
who is noted
became
for
one of the most popular
dedication
stars
to
to
the
the truths
TV.
found in the Bible, as well as
It was
his
one of the
energetic
longest
approach
running
to
and most
educating
watched
other
shows of
people
its
about the
time,
Word
and it
of
was
God.
often in the top
Jack
5
is
in
a
TV
significant
ratings.
figure in the
It was
Christian
getting over
ministry of
10
the
million
present day
people
since
per
he
show
establishes
when it
and
was at
serves
its
as
peak.
the senior
But
pastor
Bonanza
of Calvary
did more
Chapel,
than just
Chino
make him
Hills, in the
famous.
state of
Through
it
his
made him
sermons,
rich,
writings,
too.
and outreach
Blocker
efforts,
made
he
a
has
good
had an
pay as
impact
one
on
of
the
the
shows
shows
of a
main
variety
stars,
of people.
and it kept going
His life
up
is
as
a
the
good
series went
example
on.
of how
He was
faith,
very rich by the
determination,
middle
and
of
the
the
grace of Jesus Christ may
1960s,
have
but
a
he wasn't the type to
transformative
waste
effect.
his money on
Jack
fancy
Hibbs
Hollywood
was born
things.
and raised
He
in
made
Southern
smart
California,
investments that
a
secured
region
the
that is
financial
well known
future
for
of
its
his
diverse
family,
cultural
while he
landscape
continued to
and the
do
many
what he
challenges
loved.
that it presents.
Blocker made
The
time
ideals
for
that
pictures,
Jack
even
was
though he had
raised
a busy
with were a
schedule
combination
with a
of
hit TV
conventional
show.
beliefs
In
and the changes that were taking
1963,
place in society
he
during
was in
his
the comedy
formative years.
Come Blow
He
Your
struggled
Horn
with
with
finding
finding
answers
answers
to
which
issues
showed that
about
he
his
could do
identity
well
and
in films
purpose,
that weren't
which
westerns.
ultimately drove him
In
to look for guidance. In spite of these
1968,
obstacles, he was
able
able
to
to
cultivate
cultivate
strong
strong
principles
principles
and
and clarity through
where
his
he played a scary,
experiences,
tough guy,
which ultimately
very different
shaped
from
his
the
life
likable
and
Hoss.
ministry.
Blocker's
Frequently,
range was
Jack
becoming
thinks
known
back
in
on this
Hollywood.
period of
He
time
could do more than
as a
just
period
play
in
cowboys.
which God was
He could also
preparing
do
him
comedies,
for what was to
dramas,
come.
and even action
When
movies.
Jack was a young man,
as good
he
as
learned
Stanley
the gospel
Kubrick
for the first
Hey,
time,
hey,
and
Stanley
it had a
Kubrick
profound
chose
impact on
Dan
his life.
Blocker to
After
play
attending
Major
a church
T.J.
service,
King
he
Kong
was profoundly
in
affected
Dr.
by the
Strangelove.
message that Jesus
a part that
Christ
went to
love
Slim Pickens
and
in
forgiveness
the end.
are both
Blocker's
available
agent
to
turned it
everyone.
down because they didn't.
It was on
know
that
it
day
would
that he
become
made
one
the
of the most
decision to
famous
devote
roles
his
in
life to
movie
God
history.
and
Blocker
to
played
serve other
another
people.
lead part in the
It was a defining moment for him.
1968
Because of this
TV
shift,
movie,
he became
significantly
in this
more
movie, he
passionate
was John
about studying
Keebu,
the
a
Bible
blacksmith who
and
gets
spreading
people
the
to follow
word
him
to
to
others.
California and help
In the
him
year
build a town. His next movie was the comedy western The Cockeyed Cowboys of Calico County, in which he played a shy cowboy looking for love. He never forgot where he came from, even as his career took off. Blocker did something strange in business in 1963. In the end, the Bonanza Steakhouse Company opened restaurants all over the country, and he helped make it happen. It wasn't just a business deal. His attitude was built into the company. The idea was easy: a restaurant that was good for families and didn't cost a lot of money. That being said, Blocker was what made Bonanza Steakhouse stand out. He was one of the most recognizable faces on TV because of his part as Hoss Cartwright, and he used that fame to make the restaurant a hit. He was what the brand stood for. Blocker promoted the restaurant in ads and at chain openings, and he made sure the quality matched the clean, friendly image he had created on Bonanza. He knew that people would keep coming back to the restaurant if they thought of Hoss Cartwright as friendly and warm. He was right, too. As it spread across the U.S., the chain grew quickly and became one of the most well-known restaurant names at the time. It wasn't a small side project. It was a big money move. As early as the 1960s, millions of people watched each episode of Bonanza, and Blocker was getting money from more than just playing thanks to his work with the steakhouse chain. He had a strong second source of income from the growing number of businesses, which gave him a steady flow of cash. Blocker was making a lot of money in other ways besides running restaurants, though. He was in high demand for ads and commercials because he was one of TV's biggest stars. Blocker took full advantage of the fact that businesses wanted Hoss Cartwright to sell their goods. In print and TV ads, his name and likeness were used on everything from Western-themed goods to everyday items. He built a huge fortune with these advertising deals, his pay from Bonanza, and the money he made from investing in restaurants. When Bonanza first aired in 1959, Blocker was thought to be worth about $150,000. By 1965, when the show was at its peak, that number had gone through the roof and reached $3 million. By the time he died in 1972, he was thought to be worth $5 million, which is about $25 million today. He didn't just spend money, of course. He also got rich by buying and selling homes. Blocker bought several homes, including a 5,000-square-foot house in Los Angeles' Hancock Park. The fact that the house was later sold to singer and director Rob Zombie shows how important it was. He also kept real estate investments in Texas, buying land that would keep going up in value over time. But Dan Blocker Beach in Malibu is one of the most lasting real estate links to Blocker. What's the story behind this deal? In the middle of the 1960s, Blocker made an interesting bet with his Bonanza co-stars Lorne Greene and Michael Landon. At the time, they put together millions of dollars to buy a half-mile stretch of prime Malibu beachfront. It was already worth a lot back then, but that piece of land could be worth over $100 million now. But for the Bonanza stars, it wasn't all about making money. They wanted to keep the land's beauty and make sure it was used for the good of everyone. Blocker really liked Malibu. He raised his family there and lived there. He thought of it as a peaceful place away from the chaos of Hollywood. But after he died in 1972, his co-stars did something that really honored his memory. They didn't sell the beachfront land for a huge profit. Instead, they gave it to the state of California.
It was changed its name to Dan Blocker Beach in 1979 to honor the man who had worked for years to keep it safe. The land sat empty for decades, ways that few artists of his time could claim. He had a lasting effect on TV, business, and social. He had a lasting effect on TV, business, and social justice. Blocker had always been a man with strong morals. A lot of famous people hid their political views, but he wasn't afraid to speak out. He had been a Democrat all his life and spoke out about topics that were important to him. He was one of the few actors who publicly backed Pat Brown against Ronald Reagan in his re-election bid in 1966. In 1968, he backed Senator Eugene McCarthy, who was against President Lyndon B. Johnson's policies on the Vietnam War. However, Blocker's action was about fairness, justice, and standing up for what was right. In the 1960s, he showed this in many ways other than endorsing candidates. While shooting Bonanza in the South, he and his co-stars ran into a truth they couldn't ignore. Due to segregation rules, the hotel they had booked wouldn't let the show's black cast and crew stay there. Blocker was furious and didn't think twice. He made it clear that no one from Bonanza would stay at the hotel if they wouldn't let everyone in. He, Green, and Landon packed up and left because they didn't want to support a business that supported racism. Blocker stood up for himself more than once. He was going to play at a theater in Jackson, Mississippi in 1964. He had been told that the place wasn't divided, but when he got there and saw that it wasn't, he didn't think twice. He quit and wouldn't play. He later made it clear that he would never work somewhere that didn't treat everyone the same. At that time, Hollywood didn't have a lot of films with this kind of excitement. Blocker never moved away from speaking out against unfairness, while many stars chose to stay quiet on social issues to avoid trouble. But Blocker was also a humble man who put others before himself. Even though he was one of the highest-paid stars on TV, he often spoke out against how wrong it was that some people had more money than others. He once said that his Bonanza pay was absolutely immoral, saying that teachers and tutors who shape future generations should be paid a lot more than artists. Based on his background, this point of view made sense. In his past life, Blocker worked as a teacher. He had lived on a small income and knew what it was like to work hard without knowing if you would have money at the end of the month. He never forgot where he came from, even as his wealth grew. He was famous, but he hated being in the spotlight. Blocker, unlike many artists who try to get attention, tries to avoid it. In fact, he moved his whole family to Switzerland in 1970 to get away from the stress of Hollywood. He was already a millionaire, so the choice wasn't about money. He just wanted his family to have a calmer life away from the chaos of the show business. Blocker first became interested in Switzerland after reading about it in National Geographic. When he finally went there, he was amazed by how beautiful it was and how peaceful the people were. Most of all, Lugano felt like home. His kids went to an American school close by while the family lived there. The move let them grow up without having to deal with all the attention that came with having a famous dad. When Blocker got back to Hollywood, his absence made him even more mysterious. Even though he was a big star on TV, he wasn't interested in the fancy life that came with it. He liked things to be simple, to be with his family, and to feel normal, which was becoming more and more rare in the business. Blocker kept building his business company while all of this was going on. He was already rich from playing, but his investments, business deals, and endorsements made him even richer. He had made a lot of money by the early 1970s, which ensured the safety of his family. Still, he never let money define who he was. He helped others and stood up for what was right. He didn't just use his fame to have fun, he used it to make a difference. When Blocker died out of the blue in 1972, it shocked everyone in Hollywood. Fans and co-stars were sad, but he left behind more than just sadness. He left behind a beach in Malibu, a reputation for being fair and kind, and a family that passed on his name. Dan Blocker wasn't just a cowboy on TV. He worked as an actor, ran a business, helped people, and never lost sight of his beliefs.